What is up, math superstars? In this edition of Mr. Peterson Presents, I'm bringing to you fraction, decimal, and percent models. And so in this, we're going to take a look at a couple of different pictures, and we're going to find out how to write these as fractions, decimals, and percents. So our very first step here is we're going to take a look at fractional parts of objects. And so here we have this example. A fraction can be represented using a picture. So how much of the rectangle has been shaded? And so we need to figure out how many total parts are in this rectangle. So after I counted them, I figured out that there are 12 total parts in this rectangle. And we're going to count up how many are actually shaded. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we can say that there are 8 shaded out of 12. So I got my ratio there, and now I want to simplify my fractions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I'm going to divide the top and the bottom of my fraction by the same greatest common factor. In this case, it's going to be 4. So I can say that 8 divided by 4 will give me 2, and 12 divided by 4 will give me 3. And so for the fractional parts out of this object, out of the 3, for every 3 boxes, 2 of them are shaded. So now let's talk about how we're going to model decimals. And so a decimal is used to represent a part of a whole. So the decimal models are used to represent decimals in picture form. So the question here in our example is, what number is represented by the model here? And so let's first write this out as a fraction, and this is going to help us out a lot. And so we can say that we can figure out how many total parts are here for our fractions. So let's go and count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we know that there are 3 that are shaded. And so if I read this fraction reads 3/10. So as I read this fraction 3/10, I know that I can also write this decimal down as 0.3, because I know that 3 is in the tenths place, and so 3/10 as a fraction is the same as 0.3 as a decimal. So now let's take a look at this question. It says, what number is represented by the model? And so here we have a different type of decimal model here. This is a 10 by 10 grid. So we know that there is going to be 100 total parts. So I'm going to start to write this out as a fraction first, and then we're going to talk about what the decimal is. And so let's go ahead and figure out how many parts are shaded in this model here. And so we know that each row has 10. So I'm going to count by tens for the first 2 rows here. And so we know that we have 10 and 20, and then we have 4 more parts left. So we have 21, 22, 23, and 24. So I'm going to write this as a fraction, 24 over 100. And so if I say this fraction, 24 hundredths, we know that our decimal has to have 2 place values here. And so our first place value, so we have 24. So the 4 is going to go in the hundredths place, and the 2 is going to go in the tenths place. And so here we're given a number line now, and it says find the value of y and write your answer in decimal form. So the way we can do this is the same as what we did with our fractions here. So let's go ahead and count up our lines here that we have. So this is 0. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we know that there are 10 total parts here, ranging from 0 all the way to 1. And so we got to figure out where y is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight y. And y is right here where I counted the number 2. So I can say that where y is, that's 2/10. And so just like our previous example where we had 3/10, I can put 2 in the tenths place in our decimal here. So I can say that y as a decimal is 0.2. So let's talk about percent models now. Percent means parts per 100. So in mathematics, we're going to use the percent symbol when we're talking about percent. So it's really, really important that if you write numbers on a page to add the appropriate label. And so if you just write a number down, say we're talking about percent models, and you wrote 25. 25 is a number, but when we deal with percent, it has to have the percent sign. And a percent can be written as a fraction by dividing by 100. And so let's take a look at a couple examples here. And so here, 16 out of 25 squares are shaded blue. In the figure, what percent of the grid is shaded blue? So our first step here is it's giving us some information that I'm going to write out as a fraction. I'm going to write that as 16 over 25. And if I want to write this out as a percent, I need to make sure that my fraction has 100 as a denominator. And so if I'm going to write an equivalent fraction, I need to multiply the top and the bottom by the same number. So to get from 25 to 100, I'm going to multiply by 4. So 25 times 4 will give me 100. So I'm going to do the same thing at the top. 16 times 4. So when I do the math there, 16 times 4 will give me 64 out of 100. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this top number 64. That's going to tell me that the percent shaded is going to be 64%. Because percent means 64 out of 100. Let's take a look at this example. So it says in the figure to, that should say over here, that one right there, what percent of the grid is shaded green? And so this type of grid is a 10 by 10 grid. So this grid already has 100 parts. And so what we can do here to make it easy for ourselves is we can count by tens here. So we know that each line represents 10 total. So we can say that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so if I count by tens, that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So I can write this fraction as 50 over 100. And so since we're dealing with percent here, this is also 50 out of 100. So our percent is just this top number here, and that's going to be 50. And then I make sure that I write my percent sign.